Oh, yes.
Welcome back once again, everyone. Today I'm excited to do a review for you for the new Takara Tomy Generation Selects number 4 for the Transformers Generation Selects line. And this is the Deluxe Class Gulf, or as he's known in the US, Skalor. He's a member of the Seacons, who forms potentially one of the limbs or even the weapon mode for their combined mode, King Poseidon, or as we know in the US, Piranacon. So he's the second toy released. He's part of a two-toy batch, I suppose, with their leader, who I reviewed just previously to this, Turtler or Snaptrap. So if you haven't seen that yet, I recommend watching that one first before you get into this one, but it's up to you, whatever you want to do. So if you know my reviews, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at the toy's packaging, and this one's got kind of 3 layers. You got this over box, you got a sleeve, and you got the box itself. We'll open it up, see the inside, we'll look at the toy's instructions, and then we will take a close look at Gulf himself in both his, I guess, sea monster and robot modes. I'll be doing some comparisons with his mold mate Blot from the Power of the Primes Terracons team. And then at the very end, I'll be giving my final thoughts. So his box, just like the other Takara Generation Selects toys that we've received, comes in this Hasbro initiated like black overbox that they do for not just the Selects toys, but their Masterpiece and just really anything they import over from Japan. And it just says that, it's an authentic Takara Tomy product as sold in Japan. Got your Generation Selects logo, Takara Tomy, all that fun stuff. And pretty much just repeats that on every side. So let's go ahead and open this up. I'm going to cut this tape right here very, very carefully so as to minimize any kind of damage to this sleeve. There we go. Open this up. Satisfying sliding sound. Let's get it out of our way. Alright, now this is the box with yet another sleeve on it. This one just slides off and just got this really nice line art, like schematic render of Gulf. See the robot in sea monster mode there. You can see by his legs, that's your first clue that he's a retool of good old Blot. Generation Selects, Seacon's Gulf, Transformers, Takara Tomy, all that. And then just some Japanese text on the back, which I cannot hope to read. Slide that off. Move that out of the way. You guys should see my recording room, by the way, in the background. There's just boxes and stuff everywhere. But, alright, this is the actual box itself. Just a Decepticon symbol on the front. Transformers Generation Selects, which for some reason on these inner boxes it always just says Generation in the singular, whereas everything else is Generations, so I'm not sure if it's just a typo they're carrying over or what, but it's there. Just nice little line patterns all around the sides. And this opens up just like the Hasbro Selects toys. You get your Generation Selects logo with all that grid work on the inside, and then here's Gulf himself. And oh man, he's pretty. Look at all that paint. I love it. So, he got his little fishy form. He's got 2 regular guns. He's got a hand piece, which is obviously used for the combined mode, and then he's got a sword. So he's not lacking on accessories, unlike his progenitor, and really all of Power of the Primes combiners. Yeah, so all that extra budget went into like the retooling, the paint work, and just a ton of accessories, which this is what I want to see. I wish, Hasbro stop being so tight with their purse strings and give us more fleshed out toys. But anyway, here's the instructions, done up in nice gloss paper like the old school days. And you got kind of like a parts count up here on the front. Go ahead and flip it out. Here has transformation to robot mode. So you can see, where does it stop? It stops right there. Okay, very brief. And then this looks like transformations for his limb modes. So that's neat. Turn this one around. I think that finishes, that's the arm. And then I think this final one is for his gun mode. And then this bottom part is just showing off his accessories and what he can do with them. So, a lot of possibilities. These guys are a lot of fun because unlike most combiner limbs, instead of having, 4 modes, he has 5 official modes. So, good stuff there. And I also wanted to show this off in case you didn't watch the Turtler review, and that his packing slip here that came from Pulse, it calls him Generation Selects Manchester, which, it's not a location or something where he came from, because this is the one for Turtler, and it says Generation Selects Arsenal. So they seem to be early code names that they used in their database, and I would guess they did this to prevent spoilers, because they probably put them in the database before these were really properly announced. That's my theory anyway, it's what makes the most sense to me. So just neat little tidbit there. Alright, now we have Golf in his Beast mode, which I believe is supposed to be some sort of monsterized version of a coelacanth, ancient fishy fish, because he's definitely got the face for it. And man, look at that big old face. That is very prominent. It takes up like a third of his body. And you see it's almost completely painted. You got this very light pink paint. You got silver for the teeth, yellow for the eyes. Got a nice Decepticon tampo right there on the forehead. And the mouth does open and close. You can unfortunately see his robot hands inside the mouth if you look down in there, but not that big a deal. I'll allow it. He's got the exact same legs that Blot has. They're just painted differently. He's a little front heavy, so they have kind of a harder time keeping him from wanting to flop forward in certain positions. So he's got these 2 cannons on the side here, which they're optional, but they're kind of an official configuration for this mode, so I have them on there. His fin can rotate up, but that's really only for transformation. The tail fin here is going to become his gun in pretty much all of his other modes. So in theory, he could use it in this mode too, as like a little hidden weapon. It's kind of neat. The underside doesn't look too bad. You got the head turned around so his face isn't showing, though his arms are very obvious. You got his little chest, which, just like Blot, still flips down to reveal a 5mm port. Not only is that, convenient for play value, it actually does serve a purpose for storage. I'll show you that in a moment. So overall, he looks really nice. He's very, very well painted. His coloration is much closer to his Japanese cartoon model than it is to the original toy, which is to be expected. Naturally, I prefer the toy colorations on a modern update, but I mean, I'm not going to complain. We could have just not gotten the Seacons. His little arms, they're just on a simple little swivel here. And they can go pretty much a full 360, barring clearance issues from his weapons and legs. This one's a little bit tighter, but doable. Not so tight that I'm worried about it breaking. So yeah, I mean, it's just a fun little beast mode he's got here. He's delightfully ugly. Now, his other accessories, you have this little, I don't know, stinger or sword type weapon that I just dropped. And you can see it's only painted on 2 of the 3 sides. And you see there's connectors and stuff. Now those don't serve a purpose for Golf himself, but this does seem to be part of a combined weapon mode for King Poseidon that they haven't shown in the instructions yet. I'm imagining that maybe it'll be in the instructions for one of the last toys that gets released, and kind of that 3rd wave there. We'll see what happens with it. And then you have the new and improved combiner hand, and I gotta say, this is great. It seems to be more of an update of the Combiner Wars design than the actual Power of the Primes design. And that it has a thumb that switches sides rather than having the 2 thumbs. However, it does it a lot better because it's 2 pieces. It's got a second hinge in there. The Combiner Wars one, it was just 1 piece that went like this. This has got 2, so you can bring it kind of all the way up into its higher position and still move the thumb around. So that's really great. And they got a pin in there to hold it together. The wrist little peg thing here, it does rotate back and forth like the Power of the Primes toys. Each one of his fingers is articulated by itself, which is amazing. and allows for much more dynamic posing. The top of the hand has a removable piece, very much like the Power of the Prime's hands. It's got a 5mm hole in the top, which I believe is for attaching a weapon mode to. I think they attach to the top of his hand. But you go ahead and remove this, and you have a cavity which is very similar to the Power of the Prime's toys. Now here's the handpiece from Blot for comparison. You can see that it's all new parts, except maybe this peg right here, that might be the same. Yeah, it kind of looks the same. Everything else, I believe, is completely new molding. Even the thumb there is new. The cavity, you can see they're very similar in appearance. However, they're not completely interchangeable. So the filler piece from Blot does not sit into this one because it lacks the large hole required for this to fit into. And then this piece, for one, it doesn't fit on this hand because the spikes are in the way, but I did test this on Jazz's little hand piece thing, and there's a little tab right here that they added in for some reason that makes it not fit into this hole. So blocks it from being interchangeable that way too. Now, because they use kind of the same cavity here, you would think, all right, well, we got Titan Master or Prime Master compatibility. So whipped out one of these little special Prime Masters. Naturally, it works in Blot's hand just fine, like it's designed to. Holds in there very well. The little heel spur thing plugs into that hole there. However, when you plug it in here, it goes in, but that hole seems to be too big for his heel spur to actually plant into. I'll even put him in like this just to show you. It doesn't really seem to work. And not to mention, this little kind of dip here is too shallow to really accommodate the head. It kind of blocks it from pegging in. So that's very strange. I don't know why they would have included this hole here if not to make it Titan Master compatible, but it doesn't actually work. And I want to chalk it up to a design flaw. I think they meant for this thing to accommodate those pieces, but it doesn't quite fit. So that is a shame. They could have made these a little more interchangeable, but at the end of the day, they're really not. Now, as far as storing his extra weapon pieces, he can do that in this mode. You flip that little chest panel down, revealing the 5mm port, and you just plug his little sword weapon into that. Straighten that out a bit. And it does create a bit of a clearance issue for certain poses, so just be aware of that. Kind of blocks him from being able to stand up in his best way. But you can get it to work. And now the hand, you just keep it in this position with the thumb pointing to the right if you're looking at the palm. You're gonna peg it on there and then just let it rest on top of his tail like that. And that's it. It's good that he has the storage, though it's not very good looking storage. It looks kind of terrible. This thing really gets in the way of his posability and just kind of sticks way off the back there. And this, it just looks like somebody putting their hand on his butt. It looks really weird. I guess you can fold the fingers in to make it look more, or I guess look less out of place. Maybe cover up the tail with it as like a solid piece, but I'm happy there's a way to store them, but the execution really just isn't very good, unfortunately. All right, now it's transformation time. So first thing you want to do is remove any accessories you have attached to them. So let's go ahead and get these cannons off. Set them aside. Then you're actually going to remove his tail. We're just going to lift it straight up. You can see it plugs into his little butt there with a 3mm peg. So, cool. All right, now his transformation is surprisingly similar to Blot's, especially the lower body. So lift this up and out of the way, and then you're gonna pull his feet off because they fold up onto the beast mode just like Blot's do. Gonna go ahead, point his feet like all the way down as far as they go. And then you're going to plug this hole onto this little peg here on the leg. Get it nice and secure. Same thing here. Separate the feet. Now you're gonna pull this whole shell off like that. Pull the arms down. Just turn the head around. And you gotta get his fists out of the little hole here. And you'll be a little stubborn to come out, but they will come. Like so. Same thing here. Fist out. He'll play ball with us. Maybe decide to be difficult. Gonna pry it open. There we go. Cheated. Alright, so there's that. Now go ahead, fold the little monster arms all the way back. And now the positioning for this has to be pretty exact. Basically, this bottom segment's gonna be up about that much, middle segment's gonna be vertical, and this little pink armature here is gonna kind of fold all the way back. So you have to mess with it a little bit to get it to work. And the idea is, you can see these little slots right here. I'm gonna peg into these tabs. Unfortunately, they are painted tabs, so expect some loss of paint eventually, because it is a pretty tight fit. But you see, I got pretty much on there, and you gotta get it just right because it's a tight squeeze. And it may pop off on you just because of how tight it is, which is not a big deal. You just kind of press it on a little harder. All right. And here we go. This is the robot mode. Without any bells and whistles. Oh yeah, go ahead and rotate that kind of down out of the way. So very, very cool looking. You would be kind of hard pressed to tell this used to be another toy, except maybe with the legs. I mean, everything else about him looks pretty unique. The whole monster head and all that's new. The arms are quite different. Brand new head sculpt, which that's a really cool head sculpt, by the way. All the prominent crest he has there. Has all the same articulation that you would expect. We weren't quite in the age of universal joints when we were in the Prime Wars trilogy. So he's still using ball joints, you know, for shoulders, biceps, all that, hips. The waist does swivel, which is cool. A little backpack popped off. See? Doesn't take much. Does not take much to get that to pop off. But luckily it doesn't take much to get it back on either. So just know when you're handling him, you'll probably have to readjust that a few times. So overall, he looks very, very good. Now officially, you know, per the instructions, they only show how to have him use one of his weapons, and that's the little tail gun. So you just go ahead, flip that around, you get the nice painted gun barrels here, and you just plug it into his hand. Now, one problem on at least my copy is that these hands, they don't lock in place, so weight can cause them to droop a bit. Kind of reminds me of like Siege Megatrons. Now, if you press them and let go, they tend to stay in place. I'm not sure how that'll hold up in a static pose over a long period of time. Gravity might get the better of it. So he is a little weak-wristed, unfortunately, and his weapons are fairly heavy, so you're going to run into some issues with that, with posing. Honestly, I mean, they could have rectified that by having some sort of like tab or something that'll cause us to lock in better, but they didn't. So that's maybe the one and only thing I kind of dislike about the figure, is that the fist should have been a little better. But then, you know, after that, you still have, you know, this and these and all these accessories, and what do you do with them? Well, that's a good question. The only semi-official image I've seen of this toy utilizing all of his weapons at once was like the grayscale prototype. And what they did was they had him wielding his sword in one hand, and he holds it with the unfortunate hollow blue side pointing out. That's kind of the way it has to go because of clearance issues. His two little beast mode cannons are plugged together, so they have kind of matching slots, and he just think he wielded it like this or something. So it looks a little silly. The tail fin plugged into the back here. And it'll actually do this officially for some of his other modes. So it does work. Just kind of goes on the inside there. And the hand, this requires you to actually move his little monster arms up and out of the way. The hand is just gonna plug in with its little 5mm peg right here. And then just kind of sort of be out of the way. It's just gonna be kind of holding on to his body. So that's weird. You could always put this on the outside too if you want to make it a little more symmetrical and maybe have less clearance issues. So let's go ahead and do that. I like that more. Still looks kind of silly though. And it's just kind of a symptom of too many weapons and not enough places to store them. So you end up having to get a little creative, and end result looks a little silly, and he's quite back heavy. So careful with the posing. But it works. It's something doable if you want to have him storing all of his weapons at once. It's just a little bit unsightly. For fun, here's a little shot of him alongside of Blot with the robot modes. And this helps show off a little more just their overall similarities. The whole bottom portion here is exactly the same. Even the main torso pieces, looks like the combiner hinges and pegs, little chest panels, that's the same molding. Upper arms are the same molding. And I think some of the little apertures in the back that allow their beast modes to fold up, I think that's all the same. And then beyond that, the actual beast heads themselves, the forearms, hands, all those things, they seem to be completely different. So these two have a lot more in common as far as molding is concerned than, say, Turtler and his moldmate Hunger. They do share more of the same tooling. Luckily, because of some clever use of paint applications, it's not immediately obvious. By adding paint apps in some places, omitting them in others, they do end up looking quite different from one another, that works for me. They can trick my eyes into thinking these are different toys. That's good enough as far as I'm concerned. I think overall Blot's a little bit of a tighter package as far as how everything pegs together and holds together. He doesn't have a real issue with his monster head popping off his back or anything. And because he doesn't have a bevy of weapons, he actually has somewhere to store all his stuff. That reminds me, Blot, like the other Power of the Primes Deluxes, he can store his little hand weapon thing on his chest as a prime armor. And this guy, while technically you can fold down his little chest panel and plug this on there, there's not really a good place for it to go. It creates a lot of clearance issues and just looks very impractical. So I'm not even gonna bother trying to show that one off because it really doesn't work. So yeah, these are two very quality toys. Definitely two of my favorite combiner limbs released thus far. And Old Golf here just really goes the extra mile because of the sheer number of extra parts he has, extra weapons. He's obviously worth more when it comes to like ounces of plastic and paint than Blot is. So I couldn't see this guy selling for a flat 20 in modern Hasbro markets. They probably have to mark it up to like 25 or something just to keep their profit margin. Which is probably why the only way we're able to get this guy is through a Takara Tomy exclusive. Of course, we have to have the mandatory group shot with his team leader, Turtler, or Snaptrap for US audiences. You can see Turtler really towers over him. Naturally he's a Voyager, so he's going to be bigger, but just because of the length of his legs and the big old cannon sticking up on his back, he just is a much more imposing visage. And you can definitely see him ruling his team with an iron fist, because I wouldn't want to see anybody step out of line with him, You can also see that their colors clash quite a bit more than the original toys, and that is because of the cartoon accuracy, where the color schemes are tweaked a bit to be a little more unique for, Seacon to Seacon. But it's still neat seeing the team start to form, and I look forward to getting the other members here over the coming weeks and, eventually being able to look at the whole team together. It's going to be pretty exciting. Now I've decided that for the limb and weapon modes of the individual members, I'm going to do those transformations in their respective videos. That way, when it comes time to do the full Team and Abominus review, it's not going to be like a 2-hour review because there's so many combinations, you know. So let's go ahead and we'll do his leg mode first. You see, I got him back in beast mode because that seems to be just kind of the easiest place to start from, and it's what the instructions show. So, all right. So first thing I do, go ahead, remove the tail weapon, set aside, lift this up. We're gonna disconnect the legs. You're going to robot mode. Right now, you're gonna turn him around at the waist like this, and you're gonna collapse his legs down. So you're gonna open up those back panels, and something that may be very familiar to you if you've done any of the combiner stuff. Make sure that all pushes in tightly, close it back up, make sure it's locked into place. All right, and now you're gonna go ahead, connect his monster legs to the sides of the robot legs again. And this time, you're gonna leave the feet pointing in this like kind of neutral position right here. You're not gonna point them downward because it creates clearance issues. All right, now, go ahead, let's pull the monster shell out and away. Let's fold his little monster arms back. And now his regular arms, let's bring them down to the side. Turn the head towards facing forward, and then flip the combiner peg around. That way his face isn't poking out the back of the leg there. Turn these, and now you want to position the forearms to where these little slots are pointing toward his back, because they're actually going to tab onto his backpack. Bring these down, put them in kind of this diagonal position against his sides, and then you're going to bring the monster shell up to plug onto his back like you do for robot mode. But first, I'd recommend getting it tabbed onto the forearms. So get it all to line up. And get the forearms nice plugged on there, like so. And then plug the backpack onto the there you go. Put it on the back. Get on there. Forearms. Oops. Forearms came loose at all. Just make sure they plug back in. Stay there. Straighten out the upper arms for appearance sake. All right. It's a little finicky, but you can get it. And there you go. Now the little fin gun thing. Instructions have you flip the barrels out and then plug it into the inside of the backpack, kind of like I showed before. And just leave it flat like so. So you get that. Now this next step kind of depends on who you're connecting him to. Obviously he's meant to go with Turtler, though this will work with a Power of the Primes, combiner foot. You could use one of the hand foot guns from Combiner Wars if you're, attaching him to one of those. But, we're going to go ahead and show off how this works with Turtler. So I borrowed that little foot piece from Turtler. You're going to connect his hand piece to the back of the foot, very, reminiscent of Power of the Primes. And then the thumb is going to be positioned to be on the outside of the foot. So, you're going to swap it depending on which leg he's supposed to be. But I'm going to go with the instructions and assume that he's going to be the right leg here. So plug it on there. It doesn't rest as flat, you can see that, as the Power of the Primes feet. Kind of pops up a little bit, which is annoying. You can just kind of push the fingers down to make up for that though. But you can see it's very stable, very, very wide foot. Go ahead, plug it onto the bottom. And there you go. That is the leg mode. And the ratchet works just fine. Holds together very well. Oh yeah, push that down. Whoops. And it's a weird looking leg mode. Very kibbly, but most of his limbs are very kibbly. Now as far as the additional accessories, the two cannons and the sword, the instructions don't call out a storage place for them. You can get creative and you can find ways to store them, I guess. You can just put the cans together, store them on one side, store the sword on the other if you move the monster arms out of the way. But I think the reason they don't show that or promote it is, again, I believe some or all of these pieces are going to become part of the big combiner weapon. But yeah, there you go. It's a pretty kibbly but solid leg mode. Now the transformation for arm mode is actually very similar to this. So I'm just going to start at this and just kind of back it out a little. So first thing, unplug the fish face. Kind of just move these out of the way here. And now you're going to re-extend his legs. So untab those, open it up, bring this down. It's fighting me here, doesn't want to play nice. All right, make sure the legs tab back together well. Go ahead and push these back against his legs. And now you're gonna point the monster toes down as if he's going to robot mode. Oh, and I never really pointed this out, but there is a tab on the backs of the heels that plug into the back of the monster legs there, just to make them extra secure. Now you're gonna want to turn this in a way that corresponds with which arm he's gonna be. And we go to the instructions and make him the right arm, so I have him turn this way. Now go ahead and bring his robot arms back down, and you're gonna put all this stuff back together the way it was. So, you know, just tab them on there. I have these, for clearance reasons, we'll have to kind of rotate out a little bit. Let his arm move. So yeah, get that on. Make sure it plugs into the back. All right. You can kind of adjust this if you need to. But it does still tell you to keep that gun right there, so we're gonna go with that. Now for the hand, just plug it in here. Oh yeah, almost forgot. You want to turn his head backwards now, just so it's not saying peekaboo when you're, you know, posing your guy. All right, and this is the arm mode, and you know, I don't like the way it comes together as much as the leg mode, just because of the fact that you have this kibble kind of sticking off to the side that just gets in the way, but that is the official placement for it. Now, of course, you can always move this. You can lift an arm up, stick this on the back, or just not include it at all. But as far as the official transformation, this is what we got. So it looks pretty good overall. And I guess, you know, you just see this as like a shoulder-mounted weapon of some sort. All right, now the weapon mode is just a modification of the leg mode. So in hindsight, I probably should have done the arm mode first, but oh well, lesson learned. So I've got him back in his leg mode. So, you know, just go ahead, put him back in that. And then all we're doing with this, we're gonna bend the combiner port thing to a 90. Kind of might have a clearance issue getting it there. So yeah, interestingly, I would personally have his head turned around the other way, but the instructions say to turn it this way. So I'm just gonna go with that. And so the next thing you do, you take his twin cannons that are plugged together, and you're gonna put this little back piece right in there, bottom of his feet. And you can see how it becomes a gun like this. And then he gets like a little stand, which is formed by the combiner hand. So you go ahead, you're gonna remove that little piece there. The instructions have the thumb pointing as if it's still a right hand, so that's just what I'm going with. And then you're actually just gonna plug his combiner peg into that cavity there. And it's kind of a tight fit, but it does go. Push it all the way in. And there you go. That is the complete weapon mode. Kind of sags down a little bit because of the ratchet that the combiner peg is on. And right now, instructions have the 5mm peg here pointing out, but I believe the idea is when you actually attach it, this will point downward and then plug into the top of the other person's hand, like so. That's what it seems to be. So that's how they're gonna make it work. Now, I don't have any other of the limb bots to, mess with this with. I imagine, though, that because of the weight of this, it's going to be really hard for him to actually hold his weapon up. There's going to be a lot of poses with his gun pointing at the ground. You might be able to get creative and have him use 2 hands to hold this up, and then the combined, friction in the joints might be able to hold this gun up, but time will tell there. Again, there's no use for this thing because I think it's supposed to go to a bigger weapon. So, yeah, it's goofy looking, but it is what we get. And again, personally, I recommend turning the head the other way for this mode, so it's hidden better. I don't know why I have it that way. All right, but yeah, that's pretty much it for old Golf, aka Skalor. So now, what do I think of this guy? I very much like him. Just like with Turtler, there's been a lot of love put into this. A lot of extra parts, a very high part count, lots of paint. I mean, they got really creative. The combiner hand is the best combiner hand we've ever had. It does have that oddity of not quite fitting a Prime Master in there, which I don't think was intentional. I think that is an unfortunate design flaw. Maybe the other ones will be better, but probably not. So I think that was a wasted potential. Might as well have had that crossplay accessed, and it would have just taken some very slight tweaking of, one recess and one hole, and it would have worked better. But oh well. For what it is, it's an amazing hand, and I love that we actually have full finger articulation there, which, I mean, you hardly ever see that on like a retail type release, and that would have been way out of budget for your normal Combiner Wars or Power of the Primes toys. Now, he does have less retooling than his team leader did, but it works for what it is. Because of the very clever paint applications, it's really not noticeable, the parts that aren't retooled. And none of the shared parts are enough to bother me at all. So, absolutely love this figure. And I hope the level of quality we have from this is, a sign that the others that are coming shortly are going to be just as good. I have my doubts about the Manta Ray one, just because he is a retool of the Swoop or Cutthroat mold, and while it's a very nice looking mold, it's very wobbly, it's not strong at all, and doesn't work well as a leg. It's not as load bearing as most combiner limbs. So we'll see how that goes. So, obviously, kind of like Turtler, I think you should definitely get this guy if you have the budget. I know times are tough right now. People are getting laid off, so don't spend the last year coin on this. Plastic's not that important, please. But, if you have it, yes. Like, this is shaping up to be the best combiner ever made. And you probably don't want to miss out on that. But that's enough of what I think. What do you all think of this? Is he as good as you had hoped he was? Is there anything you would change or improve with it? I'd love to know what your feedback is in the comment section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to give it a like. Let YouTube know that you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for my first ever look at the character of Golf, aka Skalor. And with all that said, I will see you next time.